present, as Brenda does, without titles. I'll just read them in the order of the participant list on my screen. And I will ask for a couple of people on the phone to identify themselves. So I see present Joe Burney, Ray Smith, Steve Moe, Andrew Martin, Bill Johnston, Caitlin Vargas, Dan Hurley, Daniel Collister, Emma Newman, Franny Brindle, Heather Buck, John Marshall, Kelly Clark, Lynn Taylor, Mark Johnson, Lucy Bennis, Megan Winter, Rachel Dorfman, Randy Groves, Rob Interfeld, Sasha Vartanian, and Tom Schwetz. Now, as I mentioned, there are 3 people on the phone. I would like to ask them if they could to identify themselves. It'd be nice to have knowledge of who's on the phone. First, I see somebody dialing in from 5201.
Good morning, Paul. That's Bob Seiko again.
Over here, I'm going to update your name on the screen. Thank you, Rob. Next, I see somebody dialing in from 5924. You are muted. Can you identify yourself calling in from 5924, please? Okay, I will move on to the third one. The next one.
I don't know if that was my number coming up like that. It might have been. This is Sarah Mazie. Was that me?
No, Sarah, that was somebody else who did not respond. You're calling in from 0887, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much for identifying yourself. So Chair, that is everybody that I can identify on the call unless somebody has joined since I read the names.
Okay, hearing none, I can tell you that Mayor Van Gordon will be with us in just a minute or two. And forgive my dog in the background. First, before we begin with calling this meeting to order, Mayor Venus mentioned something earlier, and I was planning to share that while I am perfectly prepared to chair this meeting, in the 3 years I've been with the MPO, or excuse me, that's one of our issues. We're not the MPO, we're the NPC. But in the 3 years I've been with this body, these meetings were usually, chairs were elected in January. Last year, we did it in February. I am happy to chair the meeting. I'm happy to have election for officers now, and I'm happy to have them at the beginning of February. It's whatever is the will of the group. Paul, I know you had a different view of this. Why don't you share that, and why don't we see how people feel, and then we'll get on with the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 quick points I'll make. First, the bylaws do call for election of officers for the year, but they don't specify which month those have to occur. Second, we have in the past often delayed the elections until February just to give the local jurisdictions the opportunity to perhaps modify their NPC membership. Sometimes the local jurisdictions do their committee assignments in January, and so we sometimes have different members show up in February. And then third, as Commissioner Burney mentioned, he was elected last February, and the bylaws do state that the chair serves a 1-year term, so technically his term still is in effect.
So with that, does anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other? Because I'm truly good. Yes, Mayor Smith.
I'd love to have Chair Burney go for another month because I agree with one of the statements that the other jurisdictions, like Coborg, we appoint officers in January, and it's usually the 2nd week. So we would like to have that February start off with new members. That would be Coborg's wish.
Are there any other feelings on the subject? Yes, Mayor Venus.
That sounds just fine to me. I think to give all the jurisdictions and especially Coborg a chance to figure out who's going to serve, it makes total sense. And grateful to you, Commissioner Burney, for presiding for another month.
Thank you very much, mayors, both mayors. Are there any other feelings on this? Because if there are, really, truly, we should hear them. And if there aren't, I think a decision is kind of being made. Well, then if there's no objection with the will other than myself, and with the will of the group, I will chair this. I want you all to know that after this meeting and after Monday's State of the County, I know the mayors have had experience with these, but commissioners only get one shot at it. I will feel very relieved and breathe deeply before, as all electeds know, having to take a deep breath and go through another campaign. Okay. Then the other items before we begin. Paul, it's my understanding that at our last meeting, MPC requested staff compile a list of MPC member positions on boards, committees, etc. And my understanding is that given what we just talked about, you'll do that next month after we know who we are?
Right, Chair. We just wanted to make sure that we collected the representation of the members that will start in February. So we will bring that back to you as soon as we have that compiled.
Okay. And at that December meeting, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. On that subject, I would like to take this opportunity to represent Coborg's alternate representative, which you guys so willingly changed the bylaws so I could allow an appointed official from Coborg to be sitting in this board, and that is John Marshall. He's been well involved in our transportation and planning. He is on our planning commission. He's also on the Lane County Transportation Committee. So he's got some real good experience and depth, and he's going to be a true asset for Coborg. And when I'm not available, he will be here instead. So John Marshall, welcome to the group, John, and thank you for taking on the appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank Mayor for putting me on the committee and as his replacement and sit in. So I'm looking forward to meeting with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may want to withhold judgment on that for a few months.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, are there any other comments before we move on? Seeing none, and as you can tell, if I don't see your hand, please just yell. And at the Paul, the December meeting also, MPC asked that placed on the agenda item an MPO governance structure, kind of like what it is, who we are, what our authority is. Do we need to change anything? My understanding is that that's scheduled for February. Is that correct?
Correct, Chair. We wanted to have a little more time for staff to discuss and make sure all the staff are aware. There's actually been some new staff in recent years that aren't as familiar with the history of the MPO. And also with Brenda not here today, this is an item that she wanted to present and discuss. So we will bring this to you in February.
Okay. So it's going to get heated, whoever the chair is in February. I get to pass that one on, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. And then finally, in December, we asked staff to compile a list of activities at the state and federal level that would impact transportation planning moving forward. What's going to be the status of that, Paul? I know you needed more time.
Yes, Chair. And actually, I want to maybe talk more about that later as we discuss the adoption of the RTP. But in general, we are putting together not only that list of what we see as all of the transportation planning activities, rulemaking, et cetera, that we anticipate over the next several years at all levels, but we're going to integrate that with something else that you've talked about at your most recent meeting, which is sort of the path forward with keeping the RTP perhaps more current or taking looks at it more frequently than every 4 years. And again, I'll discuss that a little bit more later on today.
Okay, well, if that is the case, and if there's no discussion on those items, we will convene the meeting officially. And the first item on the agenda is approve the December 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any changes to those minutes we need to be aware of? From anyone? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes of December 2nd.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moe has moved and Mayor Smith has seconded approval of the December 2nd, 2021 MPC meeting minutes. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say hi.
Aye.
Aye.
A raised hand aye. We're going to do it both ways. Thank you. Opposed? Let the record show that this was unanimously approved. Next item, adjustments to the agenda, announcements from MPC members. Are there any adjustments to the agenda from either board members or staff?
Chair, I have none.
Seeing none, are there any announcements that that MPC members have for the board? God. MPC, MPO. Okay, seeing none. Paul, this is the opportunity for the audience to provide input. I don't know if there is any, but I'm expecting some. So would you, if you would, could you please moderate public input?
Chair, yes, I'm happy to do that. I will say that this time I had nobody notify me ahead of time that they wish to speak during public comments today. I did forward to you earlier this morning written public comments that were received recently, this morning actually. But if there's anybody that wishes to speak during this public comment period, I would ask that they identify themselves now.
Hi, this is
I would like
to speak also.
Okay,
I would also. This is Sarah Murphy.
So real quickly, since I saw three items light up on my screen, I'm going to start with the one who I have identified by name. And so Sarah, if you would please go ahead and make your public comments. 3 minutes, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the time, this meeting and last time. I also just want to express my gratitude for your public service, both as elected officials and staff people at a time when a lot of people are opting out. It's so important that you're doing the work you're doing to improve our communities. I believe that many of you share the opinion that I share, that this RTP doesn't sufficiently advance our regional goals around climate, safety, and equity. And I do understand that you need to submit something and complete the process. It sounds like this is already in the works, but I just wanted to urge you with the decision that you had made at the last meeting to not wait until the next plan needs updating, but to progressively work on it, starting immediately. I urge you to also not wait to submit an updated plan, but to go ahead and submit an updated plan sooner, ideally by the end of the year or some point like that in the near future. And again, it sounds like staff already has something like that in the works, so that's really great to hear. Thanks again. That's all I've got for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, if you would identify yourself, I believe the caller dialing in from 4802 asked to speak.
Yes, this is Claire Roth from BEST, Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. Thank you everybody for being here today. I'm here to highlight the importance of thinking about the issues we face today as only the precursors of what future generations are going to face tomorrow. And I say tomorrow, not literally there. Rampant effects of climate change, a city reliant on cars, forcing youth and everybody to risk their lives on their walks to school, to the store, and more. We need an RTP that will serve in the public interest. It's something that cannot be passive and cannot live in antiquated values and assumptions. We have the goals, but we need a plan with teeth. I call on you to adopt a better plan, not in 4 or 5 years, but by the end of this year. And, just like Sarah said, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And I wanted to keep that short. I have one more comment. I would like to request, if possible, moving the public testimony format to Zoom, if possible, rather than calling in via phone. It's very confusing to tune in via webcast and watch that while juggling a phone separately to submit public testimony. And it can be exclusionary to people who might not be tech savvy on that front. So thank you so much for your time and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Claire. Chair, I believe I saw one other request to speak. I believe that was dialing in from, from 8865, and I believe that was Karen Knudsen. Please, could you identify yourself? Calling in from 8865. If you're talking, you are still muted. Okay, I'm not sure.
Hi there. This is. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. This is Karen Knudsen. I am calling in to give testimony. Thank you for your help in working with this interface that is set up. And thank you for the opportunity to say hello to you all today. Happy New Year. Thank you all for your service to our community and to our region. I'm Karen Knudsen, and I'm an architect and urban designer, and I teach in planning and architecture at the University of Oregon. I'm also the founding director of Better Housing Together, which is a housing advocacy organization based here in Lane County. I offered some initial comments on the RTP a few months ago, and the brief comments I'll offer today circle back directly to all of those comments, including the need, I think, to still do some basic housekeeping around public engagement and how this process is set up. I agree with the previous comments that it's difficult with many barriers and with a lot of misdirection, even looking to your agenda and the notes in the public comments that says that people who want to give comment can sign up at the meeting. That's pretty legacy, and I think we probably need to get some of those T's crossed and I's corrected, I guess. I would think it would make it easier for you all to hear from the public about the importance of our transportation planning, our regional work, and the integration of all of the concerns that you all carry in your collective work on the MPC and as individual boards and city councils. I would like to agree with the previous testimony that this RTP does not accomplish the goals that we have identified individually as communities and broadly as a regional community. It doesn't meet our goals regarding safety or traffic congestion, equity, sustainability, economic development, or community vitality. It gets some work done that we need to do, checks some boxes, but I do think that it's important that we revisit the recommendations and the priorities in this plan soon, and that work happening within calendar year 2022 is entirely possible to provide this body with the information needed to update some new priorities and recommendations within this plan, and make sure that we are aligning our investments with the priorities and the goals that we've set as a community. A lot is changing in our community. A lot will continue to change. Our transportation system needs to be leading and supporting that change, and that means making sure that we're making necessary investments in more walkable neighborhoods, in safety, in active modes of transportation, and giving people as many great, robust transportation options as possible to move around and live out their lives and take advantage of opportunities here. So please do revisit that work. Please support community efforts to increase engagement with this conversation and to advance a plan that does accomplish our community goals, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Karen. I, at this time, did not notice anybody else asking to speak. Is there anybody else that wishes to offer public comment?
Yes, Paul, I'm sure you'd be disappointed if I didn't say anything today. This is Rob Zako, so if there's an opportunity.
Rob, I almost called on you anyway. Please go ahead.
Good morning, members of the Metropolitan Policy Committee. I'm Rob Zaka, of course, Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. As others have said, thank you for your public service during this difficult time we've been living through. We really appreciate it, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. Today, as you know, you're being asked to adopt an updated regional transportation plan to satisfy federal requirements. But I trust that each of you on the Central Lane MPO aspires to do more than meet minimum legal requirements. Each of you aspires to serve the needs of the Central Lane region today and into the future. Over a year ago, you started to discuss those needs when you provide guidance on goals, objectives, and performance measures. That was a good discussion, and the result, Chapter 2 in the plan, is good, as far as it goes. But as the legendary Oregon planner John Fregonese was fond of saying, vision without action is hallucination. As we testified a year ago, where the rubber meets the road is where you plan to invest public monies. As you've not yet discussed how to invest an estimated $1.65 billion over 20 years, nor which projects are priorities, your work is not done in terms of serving regional interests. So what is to be done? First, if it satisfies the feds, feel free to adopt the plan today. Second, please understand this document is not yet a fully vetted plan for the Central Lane region, and thus we do not yet know how well it serves regional interests. As such, please be on notice that some members of the public will consider this a provisional plan, will not give it the deference normally given to one that has been vetted by the public and you are representatives. Third, please be on notice that we will be paying attention to every single Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or MTIP, amendment that comes before you. We'll testify at public hearings and we'll evaluate projects on a case-by-case basis, letting you know which we believe are in the public interest and which are outdated, no longer needed. Just because a project is in this plan does not automatically mean it should be funded. Fourth, as the Central Lane MPO has not yet done so, best our partners are looking to engage the public in assessing which investments do the most to advance shared goals. As we detailed before, we welcome you, your staff, and your constituents to engage collaboratively in such a more robust process. More details on this effort to come. Finally, insofar as we do not yet have a fully vetted plan, we urge you to direct your staff to support you with public input to begin immediately assessing regional investment priorities. We recommend that the result of this process be a revised plan you can adopt to supersede the one before you today. Moreover, we urge you to aim to complete this revised plan not in another 4 or 5 years, but by the end of this year at the latest. With wildfires getting worse and worse, we simply can't wait several more summers to plan for a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. At this time, again, I'm not aware of anybody else that wishes to speak. Is there anyone else that would like to offer public comment? Chair, I'm not seeing any responses.
Okay. First, Sarah, Claire, Corinne, and Rob, thank you very, very much for your input. Based on public comments, are there any responses or comments from MPC members? Yes, Mayor Smith.
I was going to save it for the RTP actually, but I want to make comment that I wholly agree with all of the public comment that was made prior to this moment. One of the issues that I think we all need to be aware of is Coborg was in the middle of updating its TSP, which is a part of the RTP, the local entities putting into the regional. As we were spending $10,000 to $20,000 with consults and staff time to try and update this, we recognized more and more that we were trying to fit a template that planners are used to just pulling off the shelf and filling out and updating. We recognized that the true discussion for Coborg was over and over again being adopted or adapted to the potential of spending money in the regional aspect. It wasn't truly addressing Coborg's issues. Then we looked at it and said, well, Coborg's issues are regional issues. And that's one of the elements that we've looked at. We have an I-5 bridge that is wholly outdated, very unsafe, does not allow bicycle or pedestrian traffic. It's just life-threatening to take it. It's a regional issue, but it's Coborg's issue to get it into the plan and have the regional money and the priorities placed on that. But it costs Coborg a lot of money. $10,000 to $20,000 for Coborg on planning is a big bite in our budget. The larger metropolitan areas have full-time staff that work on these things all of the time, and that's part of their built-in budget. This is an expense that is added to every year to try and plan. Coborg believes in planning. I believe the RTP is obsolete already. I know that the TSP that Coborg has is obsolete. And I think we all need to recognize that. We all need to recognize that the processes, and it's plural, the processes that we go through to try and get jobs done, for Coborg, it's overwhelming to get to the point where we could actually put a shovel in the ground and do something. We spend more time and energy on planning and prioritizing and justifying than we do getting it done. And I think that's being recognized statewide in my talks with legislators and others. What are we actually getting out of this besides a lot of processes and planning? And then when we get to the end of it, what are we actually getting? And we don't have that answer. And that's an embarrassing fact. We don't really have the answer as to what it's doing 20 years from now. We're looking at trying to get a 25-year plan, 2045. We've had our bridge on this list and been pushing for 25 years. And now I'm hearing rumbles that because it's been on the list for 25 years, it shouldn't be a priority. So processes, planning, that's all a huge element. And we need to look at that.
Great comments, Mayor. And we have 4 people in the queue right now. So first, Councilor Groves, followed by Mayor Venus.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, and thank you to the 4 speakers that spoke to this issue. I agree with what I heard. I agree with Mayor Smith. I liked how Rob Zako framed this. This is a provisional plan because I do recognize we need to approve this for the feds. So I'm prepared when we get to the issue of voting yes on that. But I would like to see us turn around and start the process of really digging into the plan and trying to think in terms of 21st century needs and as we move forward. Now, we may disagree on specifically what those needs are, but I think we all recognize that there's a lot of work to be done here, and this is just the beginning. I still feel like we had too little time to address this, but again, I recognize we need to get it in, and I hope in future cycles after we get readdress this in the next year or this year. I hope that we can in the future make this a higher priority where the process starts earlier and we really can be looking out 20 or more years. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Yes, Mayor Venus.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the 4 folks who testified. And I'm just going to, piggyback what everyone else said before me, that I totally agree that there hasn't been enough time. This does not clearly meet our goals and it feels very outdated and we need to put some time into it. I would advocate that this is a monthly topic on our agenda every month, that there's an aspect of this that we discuss. So I'd like to see it come back as early as February. And I think that given the comment about a deadline at the end of the year, we will have to do it at that level, that sort of pace. And I also think, there, in my mind, there, and Mayor Smith, I appreciate your comments because I think there are 2 pieces, and there's the process piece and then there's the content piece. And the process piece is actually not to get lost in it, but it's a little gnarly because what we've been presented with is that each jurisdiction has created its own transportation system plan. And so this plan simply consolidates those all into one plan. That, in fact, is not regional planning. And that's siloed planning. And I think what we're really being asked for, and the call here is, if we're really going to address climate change, if we're really going to address equity and safety, we need to have a filter that we agree on as a commission about how are we using those goals and those objectives in order to filter what are our priority, where are we going to get the best bang for the buck regionally in terms of having an impact on reducing congestion, reducing the emissions, increasing safety. So I think that's a hard process challenge because we're elected officials coming from our respective jurisdictions who are deeply invested in their own transportation system. So that's not a simple thing, but I actually think that's the game changer here is that coordination. So and once that's done, it feels like then the filter, that's a much less tangled conversation because we've actually agreed on that process.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And to illustrate your remarks, here we had the Mayor of Coburg, the Mayor of Eugene, and now speaking will be the Mayor of Springfield. Yes, Mayor Van Gordon.
Oh, thank you. I thought everybody had some good context and good content, and I would be supportive of continuing to talk about this in a pretty regular time frame. I think there's just a couple of things that we kind of want to pull on. One of them is, look, we did take public input for the plan, right? Like, and I would just caution everybody to go, okay, if we're in a changing environment where we need to continue to work on this and be more iterative, we can accept that and also acknowledge that we have taken public input on the plan. Like, this wasn't just built up in a black box with no transparency around it. And I think it's on a lot of us to really just talk through, well, okay, what does that mean? And how do we pick it up again in a way that makes it a little bit more responsive and flexible? The one thing that I think we're trying to land is some sort of regional coordination and flexibility while still giving jurisdictions the authority to run their own cities. And I always get a little bit nervous, especially around this body, when we talk about sort of, hey, we're going to make policy decisions that explicitly contradict where the policy goals of our individual boards are. And I think it's really important that we sort of like understand that the RTP ingests all those transportation projects so that people giving public comment, if you have concerns about individual projects, really go back to those jurisdictions and challenge them. But I think we've got to be supportive of where our individual boards are, and then just ask the question. It is a fair question to ask, how do you coordinate better? But I'm always going to come at it from a place of, hey, how do we coordinate better versus put this as a body in a position where we're enforcing our will on one of the other jurisdictions. That's just not what this body is. So I would strongly encourage folks that we've heard from a couple of times that if you have questions about individual projects, and I come from a jurisdiction, we are notorious for putting everything in the kitchen sink in the RTP because we think about we might need it. But if you have questions about individual projects and why they're there and what do they mean and how are they meeting the community needs, I would encourage you to go back to that individual jurisdiction and give that board the comment there.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Brindle.
Hi, thank you, Chair. And I so appreciate the comments that I heard today from the public. I agree with all of them. And I also very much appreciate what the mayors have shared just now in reaction to those comments. One of the things I noticed in reviewing the RTP, and I did go through it pretty thoroughly in some spots, and one is the regional commute patterns. And as I see it currently, we've got 65,000 people who are commuting to and from their jobs within the MPO. And of those large amounts of people, some are going from Eugene to Springfield and back again. But there's 79,000 work trips that are into the MPO and out of the MPO for jobs. Those are the existing commute patterns. And the challenge that I find, and that our agency finds, is that we're trying to meet the current needs of our communities and all of the modes, and also look to the future. And it's a difficult task to do. What I am seeing in trends around remote working, virtual meetings, I think that really helps us get there. I also think that some of the projects on our list, and I appreciate what the mayor of Springfield, Sean Van Gordon, spoke of, they are reacting to the individual jurisdictions and what they see their needs being. So I want to keep that in mind. Also, I wanted to say that when I started as an area manager, which has been about 10 years, I'm approaching my 10-year anniversary, we had a citizens advisory committee that was that met monthly, talked about issues and concerns of the MPO, and brought their comments and reviewed documents and provided great public comment and helped steer and provide that information to the MPC. That was dropped, I don't know, I guess it was 2016, 17. I don't know if something like that should be revisited at some point as we go through this process of making this this RTP in revising it for the next year, which I think would be a really good idea. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Mo.
One quick thing here. I will support action on this when it comes up to us. But I want everybody out there to know that on our last December meeting, we decided to go ahead and accept this now, but change the way that we do it ahead of time. Start moving things up. Take everything seriously out there. Times have changed, and we're going to have to incorporate that in our decisions. And I'm hopefully that we will move forward quicker. That's going to be hard on staff, but we need to get a little bit faster in what we're doing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I agree with what everybody here has been mentioning. I completely understand and agree with the public comments that we've received too. I think we have really considered what we need to do in the future. This particular plan that we have to pass now to just keep our federal funding has a lot to be desired. But I think we have the public will, the elected will here to change the process and do it better in the future. I'm committed to doing that. It sounds like everybody else here is committed to doing that as well. This is the first time I've been through this particular process. And I think for some of us, it's this in the same way. And so it's been eye-opening, to say the least. And I know a lot more now than I did when it was even first presented. And so I hope to do a better job in the future of being able to go through it, in sections, as maybe we can be presented it by sections to get to understand it better and to improve it in the future and make sure it meets our community needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other member that would like to make a statement at this time?
Get that. Could you try again?
Sorry.
Someone needs to mute themselves. I don't know who it is.
Okay.
That's Siri's talking to me. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry about
that's
that.
Councilor Mo. Okay.
I'm Siri. I didn't turn off my microphone.
You can't blame Siri's, Councilor. That was you. Okay. I'm just kidding you, Steve. Yes, Mr. Norden.
I just like to remind the people on this board that LTD is selecting a new general manager in the next few months. And this consciousness that is expressed among these people needs to be enforced upon this new person who'll be dragged into our community and directed on how to do transit. So it just kind of a heads up that this is in the next couple of months that we will have a new general manager, and the people on this board will be involved in deciding who that person is.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I would just like to say that I think it's very clear that this body appreciates and has affinity with some of the comments that were made earlier. Just a couple of comments from me, if I may. One is, it really feels like this time frame of making these decisions was based somewhere in the 19th or 18th century. We live in a time where, right? You can pick up your phone and you can text someone on the other side of the world and they have it in 3 seconds. And we're redeveloping a plan every 4 years or making a plan for 20 years. It just doesn't make sense to me. It also doesn't make sense because if you think about it, in Councilor Grove's comments, he's talked about a transportation plan for the 21st century. Hell, we're over 20% into the 22nd century. We've really got to get on this. And for those speakers that discussed some of the overarching issues, one of them being climate, as someone who 7 years ago retired from a business that was organized around decreasing carbon emissions and dealing with energy portfolios of large metropolitan areas and moving them from dirty to clean energy and doing it in a way that created jobs. It's refreshing for me to hear this discussion. The only other 2 points I would make are that it's interesting that we are being asked to approve, and we will, I think, can't assume that until the vote, but we're being asked to approve something that meets federal minimum standards in order to keep dollars flowing and meet federal timeframes. I don't know about any of you, but I wasn't elected to the federal government. I'm trying to represent, secondarily my hometown of Springfield, but we have the mayor and Councilor Moe to do that. I'm trying to represent with Commissioner Buck interests of the entire county. And I think, and I'm going to give you an example. I think that we need to say and build into our planning what we as a body feel is important. And if pots of money don't meet that, then the question becomes, how do we change those pots of money? And I'll give you a quick for instance. I would love to see this body develop a plan that could subsidize the cost of putting in electric car charge, maybe subsidize the cost of financing electric cars, maybe subsidize the cost of putting in electric chargers that are powered by solar in commercial buildings, and maybe even residences across this county. I'll bet you any amount of money, there's no pot of money for that. But I don't see how anything could relate more to the future of transportation. So, that's my sense. The only other comment is, and maybe I misheard, but it sounded to me like the best organization is offering to do more in-depth public input and have that input informed by more experts. And my question, Paul, which you can answer now or we can just deal with later, is would that be added value for the staff? And how could the staff of our organization that work for us assist that group immediately starting that input process to help us? So those are my only comments. If everyone's good, we'll move on. Oh, yes. You know what, the way I move my cursor, it has a hand and it looks like a raised hand. And right now it's over the head of Mayor Van Gordon, but you don't want to speak, do you? Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion now if you want. Steve,
I don't believe there's any action item at this time.
It's action requested, approved resolution. Is that where we're at?
No, we're now going to move to, this was comments from the audience and our response.
Oh, okay, we haven't gone, okay. So
that's okay.
I'm trying to go too fast, sorry.
I do too, Steve. You and I don't have that much time. We got to get things done. Item 6, Metropolitan Planning Organization issues. 6A, and I think this is where you are. Adopt regional transportation plan. At this time, I believe Ms. Clark and Mr. Thompson are going to give a presentation, and we're really now getting into the meat of today's meeting.
Chair, thank you. I am going to give a very brief staff presentation. We are bringing to you today the draft Regional Transportation Plan, 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, plus its associated documents, including the congestion management element. We are asking for adoption of that by approval of Resolution 2022-01. We understood at the December 2nd MPC meeting that you provided that direction to staff to bring this for adoption this month. Public comment period closed on December 10th, and we provided in the packet all public comment received up to that date and staff responses. We'd like to note that we have been working on this for a number of years. We did start gathering public comment and working with you on elements of the RTP more than a year and a half ago, when we had extensive discussions and public comment, for example, on the goals, objectives, policies, and performance measures that became part of this draft a year later. We also have been working towards making sure that the project lists do reflect as required and are consistent with the locally adopted project lists in all local, regional, and state plans. It is a chicken and egg problem. It is something that we want to do better at. And I think one of the things I don't want to lose focus on is that this RTP has an entirely new performance-based planning and policy framework and a whole new set of performance measures behind that. Those performance measures illustrate, as has been pointed out in some of the public comment, how this plan currently may not get us to where we'd like to see in 20 to 25 years. And I think what happens with that chicken and egg situation with the state requirement for local TSPs to be consistent with the RTP, just like the federal requirement says the RTP must be consistent with the local plans. The performance-based planning framework in this new RTP should inform local jurisdictions' reviews of their local TSPs, should inform regional discussions as we move into the next 4 years and update or revise this RTP again, hopefully sooner than 4 years. There's a lot more I could say. We really believe that we're following direction at this time to get this adopted, and we have begun work on developing the pathway, or if you will, sort of the calendar for moving forward over the next 4 years, not towards a goal to do something at the end of 4 years, but with milestones that we can achieve throughout the next 4 years, and bring to you updates to the RTP, bring to you discussions on individual points, bring to you regional discussions around local decisions that are going to happen because of state rulemaking. We've discussed this again. Land Conservation and Development Commission anticipates new rules later this year that will require many of your jurisdictions to revise their local transportation system plans. We believe this body should remain informed of those, and perhaps as that work progresses, that could inform updates to the RTP, whether it be in goals, objectives, and policies, or ultimately in projects on the RTP project lists. We've not only begun laying out that pathway with respect to all of that local work. I'll mention one brand new thing, and there's a lot happening, you know that. But just yesterday, I received from the US DOT in Washington, DC, something that they published December 30th. And what they published December 30th was a whole new set of 8 planning emphasis areas that the MPOs and the DOTs should start considering as they do their next round of planning. This happens every so often. It just so happened to come out literally yesterday, where the federal government has issued 8 new emphasis areas that MPOs should consider as we do our planning work. I could rattle those off real quick if you need me to, but really that would take us down a rabbit hole. That's one of the things that we will bring to you as we lay out this roadmap for the next 4 years. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Ms. Clark, did you have anything? No. Discussion by the board. I see Mr. Norton has his hand raised.
I'd just like Paul to rattle those things down real quick. He's got 8 items. Just read the 8 items.
I'm going to do that, and excuse me for a moment. I thought I had my laptop plugged in, and it wasn't. My battery literally just died, and I had them up on the screen. So give me just a second, because I haven't memorized.
No, Paul, while you're doing that, perhaps we could hear from Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'll vote to support the RTP, recognizing, as I think we all do, that it is obsolete already. And again, I admit that even Coborg's TSP is obsolete. We recognize that. We were in an update process, and we recognized that our process was not working to get true information for what our TSP should be, so we stopped it. So it's nice to hear that maybe we'll get some federal guidelines to look at emphasis and see where our transportation system plan should go or should be. Again, I mentioned that, you know, being a small town, this planning and all these multiple processes are are very painful for Coborg when we have to consider my council and staff truly believe in planning, and we have benefited from planning, extensive planning over the years. But it is a big bite for us to continue to update these things and then look at a regional aspect and recognize that we're already needing an update. That's been Coborg's process over and over again. Oh, we just finished it. It's time to update it. Mm-hmm. And it usually is a reactionary thing because of the development that Coborg is undergoing, with a 25% increase in population, with businesses growing, and the commuter traffic through our town exploding, literally. We are reactionary to these things. So I'm looking forward to something that maybe the MPO and MPC and US DOT and ODOT and everybody else can help to put forward a process that's going to work so that these RTPs are valuable when we adopt them. I think we really need to start looking at down the road. We've been hesitant, and I know Lane Act and MPC have been hesitant to prioritize. We need to have a regional discussion and say, we accept that this is our top priority in this region, and we want to put money toward that. We really need to do that. That's what we're here for, is to make tough decisions. I'm in full support of so many regional aspects. I have family all over this county. I have disabled daughter who relies on LTD. I just see all of these things, and I understand these aspects. I'm not here just to represent Coborg. I'm here to represent a regional transportation. And we need to look at truly prioritizing and saying these are the important things, and this is where we want to put the money for the good of most people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Paul, I know you were about to respond to Mr. Norton.
Yes, Chair. I'm happy to summarize the 8 new emphasis areas for our planning work. I haven't had a chance to really delve into these. Again, I got them late yesterday, but here's what I have. So US DOT issued this on December 30th and states that FHWA, Federal Highways Administration, and Federal Transit Administration, FTA, have jointly issued updated planning emphasis areas. They recognize that state DOTs and MPOs are in varied points of their planning work, and so there's considerable flexibility in implementing these, but they encourage the work beginning as soon as possible to address these new emphasis areas in our planning work program and in our plans. So really quickly, I've got about a paragraph on each. I'll give you the title and maybe a sentence or two on each. First one is tackling the climate crisis, transition to a clean energy and resilient future. I think that one is fairly self-explanatory. Second one is equity and justice 40 in transportation planning. The third one is complete streets. I'll read a sentence on that. It says that we are encouraged to review current policies, rules, and procedures to determine their impact on safety for all road users, and include provisions for safety in future transportation infrastructure, particularly those outside automobiles. The next emphasis area is around public involvement and bringing diverse viewpoints into the decision-making process. The next one is addressing the strategic highway network and asking state DOTs and NPOs to coordinate with the US Department of Defense. The next one is asking for enhanced coordination with federal land management agencies and the transportation facilities that federal land management agencies oversee. Seventh one is looking at planning and environment linkages. It says that we encourage state DOTs, MPOs, and public transportation agencies to implement public planning and environment linkages as part of transportation planning and in the environmental review process. So they want more emphasis on environmental impacts. And then the last one is data in transportation planning. And this one basically talks to how so many entities out there are working with transportation data. They just want to see better sharing of that, more efficient sharing of that, so there's less cost in duplicating transportation data.
Thank you very much, Paul. I see no other hands up. I know Councilor Moe is going to make a motion. We can always discuss that motion. Councilor Moe?
I would make a motion that we approve resolution 2022-01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Approval of resolution 2022-01 has been made by Councilor Moe, seconded by Councilor Groves. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show that resolution 2022-01, I think that means the first resolution of the year 2022, has been made by Councilor Steve Moe, seconded by Councilor Randy Groves, and passed unanimously by this body as a provisional plan, unanimously. The next item is 6B, adopt air quality conformity determination. My understanding, again, Ms. Clark and Mr. Thompson will provide a report before we discuss and act on this.
Thank you again, Chair. I will be even more brief on this one. This is the federally required air quality conformity determination for the long-range regional transportation plan that you just adopted. This action is actually the action that satisfies the federal requirement for us to, if you will, reset the 4-year clock and ensure funding can continue to flow. The requirement is ultimately that we are addressing the air quality adequately in this area. I will remind you that this area is only under a limited maintenance plan for small particulate matter, which means that we have essentially achieved our goals in that area, and now we are just trying to maintain that compliance with particulate matter emission standards and not backslide. This is a technical analysis and a technical, if you will, report and adoption. I will note that there were no public comments received during the public comment period or public hearing on this. However, that said, perhaps of more importance because of its technical nature, this air quality conformity determination does go through a required interagency consultation with Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and other agencies that we involved in reviewing this determination, and they have all signed off on it. So we are asking for your approval of resolution 2022-02 today.
Thank you very much. Anything, Ms. Clark? Okay. Questions, comments, discussion from board? Seeing none?
You can still make a resolution if you'd like.
How about a motion?
I'm sorry, I make a motion that we, it's called a resolution, approve resolution.
You're right. We're making a motion to approve the resolution. Sorry.
Motion to approve the resolution 2022-02.
Second.
Second. It's been moved by Councilor Moe, seconded by actually Vice Chair Groves. I apologize. To approve resolution 2022-02. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? From what? Let the record show that resolution 2022-02 made by Councilor Moe, seconded by Vice Chair Groves, has been approved unanimously by this body. We are now on item 6C, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act Flexible Funding Priorities. Mr. Thompson, I think, again, you'll provide us a staff report on this.
I will, Chair. Thank you. So this item is following up on the discussion we had last month with Travis Brower from ODOT on the Oregon Transportation Commission's consideration of how best to invest the funding coming from the recent congressional passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. In particular, OTC is looking for input on how best to use the flexible funding portion of that package or that bill. Mr. Brower indicated that we should testify early and often, and the Oregon Transportation Commission will have this on their agenda at their meeting later this month. So what we prepared and attached to the cover memo in your packet is a staff recommendation for public comments to be delivered at the January OTC meeting. We also understand that as we move forward, or as the OTC moves forward through February, March, and April, they will be sort of narrowing the discussion down to more specific scenarios and more specific investment options. So we anticipate asking ODOT to present to you again and to prepare further input to the. But again, what we're asking you for today is for you to approve the input that's attached in the packet, or some version of it if you wish to edit that. And then we can also discuss the delivery of that later.
Thank you. Discussions, questions, comments from the board? Seeing none?
It's Randy's turn. Let him make the motion.
I'll let anyone make the motion.
Chair, I move that we adopt this.
And I'll second it.
Vice Chair Groves has moved and Councillor Moe has seconded, if I get this right, that we quote unquote adopt this.
Brevity.
And I think that what we're approving are comments to the OTC, if that's correct. Is there discussion? Is there discussion to the motion? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Paul's comment that we need to testify in front of the OTC, I think is really poignant, because I feel like our area isn't necessarily, we don't necessarily practice that on a regular basis. Individuals like us coming in front of their board, I think is really important. I think we were talking about this on the Lane Act as well. I really feel like we need to find a way to do that in a coordinated effort and on an effort that is actually quite regular. I think it's important for them to get to know us and for us to get to know them. And so I would just encourage us to talk about that more in the future as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? I know. I'm sorry, Mayor Smith. I was just looking at you saying, yes, Mayor Smith.
Just shortly, I want to agree with Heather Buck. Once again, Coborg has recognized the need to do that for our message as Coborg to the regional areas. And I think we need to be doing that, we being the MPC, we need to be doing that at the state level. We need to put a message together constantly. We need to know what that message is, each and every one of us, and we need to carry that message forward as much as we can up the ladder. So I'll agree with Commissioner Buck's statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would like to voice, seeing that, I would like to voice my agreement also. From what I've seen, the higher up the ladder, the more they're going to respond to people at the local level that make some noise. And if that noise is coordinated, if the message is something we all know and understand, and if we have FaceTime with them, I know Mayor Van Gordon and I were trying to get FaceTime and COVID just was not enabling that. But FaceTime, you can't discount the impact of that. So I concur. Anyone else on this item?
Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry.
May the motion on the table for approval, I just want to clarify or ask for a little bit of discussion also around the delivery of this. The way I wrote the attachment was for oral presentation at the January meeting. What I suggest is that if you approve these comments, that I modify them slightly, first as a letter to be signed by Commissioner Burney and submitted within the next couple of days so that it's in the OTC packet. And then also to have somebody designated to deliver this as oral testimony at the actual January OTC meeting, whether it be one of you or you designate somebody else, depending on schedules or preferences.
Paul, will that be a Zoom meeting or in person? I presume Zoom.
They have been Zoom to date for the OTC, and I don't know of any different plans yet.
And forgive me, board, I'm just talking here, but Paul, could you send that draft to every board member and give us a specific time that you want input that you could then assemble? Because really we're starting to define what that message is. And as Mayor Smith said, it has to be consistent and we have to know it. And then let's discuss one or more of us as opposed to staff, if that is logistically possible, making that, providing that input. And again, I see Mayor Smith, do you have your hand up?
I just wanted to state that I think we should have some input in on this so that we can add to it. I look at Coborg and there's one word that is missing out of the issue with Coborg, and that's safety. And so if we can get our message and keep it strong and unified, but I would like to have some input on some of this before we carry that forward and without making a huge process out of it.
Thank you, Mayor. That's what I was requesting too. Yes, Mayor Van Gordon.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that approach. I think we've got to go physically and give the, well, I guess it's virtually, and give the testimony. The other thing I want to point out is that I don't know if it's after the OTC meeting and 2 more weeks after that, the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, it's got a public hearing, and it's probably the same content that we need to give in both places. And I would just sort of ask that, as that OTC conversation happens, that we also direct our staff to submit the same comments to the CFEC rulemaking. I feel like it's the 5th or 6th of February.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van Gordon. Yes, Councilor Mubb.
If something's prepared, I'd volunteer to make that statement. So just put me there as a possible.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. It sounds like, we've got a motion on the floor to approve what's put in front of us right now. So if we want to have adjustments, perhaps we can say, okay, if people look at the letter and in 2 or 3 days, make sure you have any edits to Paul so that this can be sent off as soon as possible for the next OTC meeting. Paul, I'm guessing that, I'm not sure what exact date you need it by to get it there on time.
Paul, what exact, we're going to simply vote on the motion, but nonetheless, what I suggested, and Commissioner Buck also, what kind of timeframes are you looking at here? And the reason I'm asking is it's very clear all board members would like the opportunity to input. It's very clear that this is beginning to establish a message which needs to be right so that it can be repeated. And it's very clear that that same message, as Mayor Van Gordon pointed out, will be repeated fairly soon at another entity's meeting. So given all that, time versus importance, what kind of time frame are you looking at for us to look at this, give you input so that you can make your time frame?
Chair, if I may, I think I'm hearing maybe 2 different things here. One is that we have a very specific agenda item that the OTC will be considering around the funding from the Congressional Act. And the attachment in your packet was specific to that agenda item that they will be considering 2 weeks from today at their meeting on January 20th. I believe that the deadline for us to get something in their packet is either tomorrow or Monday. Now, what I think I'm also hearing from you is maybe a separate request for consistent and repeated messaging to the OTC around our area's needs and priorities and concerns. And we can certainly develop something as a second set of messaging. But what I'd also like to remind the board or the MPC about is that we still are trying to organize a meeting with the newest member of the Oregon Transportation Commission, who is from Eugene, who is here locally, Ms. Burke. We've not been able to quite schedule with her yet. I actually haven't checked with Chair Bernie to see if you were able to contact her recently, but we need to, I think, maybe start with that introduction and that discussion with her, and also then carry that to the full OTC. I'm happy to do whatever you direct. I just want to make sure that we get the specific comments on the congressional funding in within the next day or two. And then again, we will be repeating or carrying forth more specific comments on that agenda item over the next 2 to 3 months.
Anyone? I see no, oh, Commissioner Buck.
Well, given the timeline, maybe we can give everybody till 5 o'clock today to get their edits in. Just trying to make it work.
Any other comment? Oh, yes. See, we have a hybrid group. Some people like to raise their hand, some people click the raise hand, but yes, Mayor Smith, you do both.
In trying to look at what listen to Paul and understand it, we do want a clear message that we're going to carry forward. But because of the time frame on this specific one to the OTC, if the different entities can get their inputs in and carry that message forward, I think we, as Mayor Venice alluded to, this kind of thing should probably be a monthly topic that we look at and make sure our messaging is right and make sure it's addressing our needs to those higher levels.
100%. Anyone else? My only input is yes, Paul. Sounds like whatever input you're going to get depends on our schedules for the rest of the day, which by definition, you're not going to get anything from me. I'm sorry, not by 5 o'clock tonight. Number two, though, no, I've made several attempts to contact the new OTC member. I do not want to hold up our moving forward on developing that consistent message and having people personally present to OTC and other entities on meeting with the OTC new member from our area. I don't want any reasons to slow down moving forward. That's my own personal opinion.
Thank you, Chair. And what I can also offer, if I don't know if this is more workable or maybe more problematic for MPC members, but when I drafted this letter or set of testimony to the OTC, I put it out on SharePoint, and regional staff were able to edit it collaboratively in one place. I can certainly put a new version shared out there to the 10 MPC members so that you can edit jointly and see each other's edits over the next 24 hours or so.
Great. Can't ask for more than that. Thank you. Are we ready to vote, or are there other comments? Is there a motion?
Chair, there was a motion and a second.
I thought there was, but that was so long ago. You're gonna have to refresh my memory. Did Vice Chair Groves make that motion? Yeah? Did Councilor Moe second it? Okay. All those in favor of approving the comments that will be submitted to ODOT, please raise their hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show that the motion made by Vice Chair Groves, seconded by Councilor Moe to approve comments to ODOT has been unanimously approved. We are now on item 6E. federal fiscal year. I think that's what FFY stands for, 2021 annual listing of federal obligations. I believe we have Mr. McAllister from LCOG here to discuss this with us.
6D first, please. Item 6D.
You have to do D before E always? I'm sorry.
No, I guess it's up to you.
No, I apologize. 6D, ODOT project priorities. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Brindle, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very brief here. This is really Franny's agenda item. What I do want to note is that Franny and ODOT have asked both the Central Lane MPO and the Lane Area Commission on Transportation to consider prioritizing a set of ODOT projects so that ODOT can have this information as they consider both the federal funding and other funding investments over the next several years. What is in your packet as an attachment is the staff committee's, Transportation Planning Committee's recommendation for prioritizing the list of projects that Ms. Brindle presented. You can see in that attachment that staff recommended prioritizing 4 projects as tier 1 or first priorities, and then subsequently 2 additional projects as tier 2 priorities, and then recommended that the MPC not weigh in on the 7th project on the list because it's outside of the MPO. Not only would this input or your action today be input directly to ODOT, but it would also inform my voice as I represent you on the Lane Act at its meeting next week. So Franny, do you want to say more here?
Sure. And Paul, is there any chance you could bring up the list of projects? We didn't rehearse this ahead of time, but otherwise refer to your packet. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Chair. Just a few minutes. So these are projects that are on the ODOT system. They are in play, as I call it, as there's been some investments made for each of them in the past years and the last step and the step before. The first 2 are on the Beltline project. And as you know, and in the past, we converted funding that was Jobs and Transportation Act funding that went for the Beltline I-5 interchange that we felt was not, and you felt was not needed for any more improvements for the I-5 corridor at Beltline. We converted some of that money and for the current project that's in construction on the Delta Beltline to fix the south ramps, to do some operational improvements to that interchange and make the traffic flow smoother. Operational improvements are not funded as fix-it projects. They are considered enhancements to the system, and those are projects that we like to put priorities on first, is to do operational improvements before we do any real expansion. The next project that's on the list is for tier 1, is the North Delta improvements at that interchange with Beltline. And what that would do is work on the north on and off ramps to the Beltline from Delta, and also make that connection possible for a local arterial bridge, which is on the second project in the list, the priority list. The arterial bridge is an important connection because it is something that would take 25% of the traffic off of the Beltline highway for local trips. It will do a regional system improvements, making a local arterial, would do more for river crossings, which is the biggest congestion point on the Beltline at this time. And it creates a secondary crossing that transit can use for east-west connectivity, for local trips, bike and ped, and 1 lane in each direction for cars. It's also an important resiliency project. In the event that the bridges might go down on the Beltline, there would be an alternative crossing. We believe that this would increase and serve local trips for folks that are using or going from the River Road Santa Clara Avenue area to jobs, services, and recreational needs. The next project on the list is the I-5 Coborg Interchange. As you saw in the RTP, Coborg is growing at the most rapid rate of all the communities in Lane County. This is an economic development project, also a regional improvement, and serves to connect bike and ped, as well as to create a safer crossing for all on that overpass. The bridge itself is considered sound, and bridge services don't see the need to do much with that bridge other than an overlay in the next 10 years. However, it does not meet height requirements really for I-5 itself. And so it would be a higher bridge as well. And it could also serve to connect utilities over the freeway. The city of Coborg is doing some economic development. They're approving development on the east side of the Coborg Interchange. And this project would help facilitate those improvements. And then another one top priority for, according to staff, was the 126B Springfield Main Street facility plan. That project is currently under review for adoption by the city council. It's had lots of public input and testimony, and it's looked upon very favorably as a corridor plan for the worst safety issue that we have in Lane County, especially for bikes and peds, is our Main Street 126B project. This first phase of that project is a $28 million design and construction to create a roundabout at 32nd Street, another roundabout at 42nd. And those roundabouts would serve to create multi-direction travel for cars, because the other improvement would be a raised median for pedestrians crossing the road. It's an equity project, a connectivity project, and address big safety concerns. And then tier 2 projects are on the 126 West, the first phase being Terry Street to Green Hill Road. It's considered a tier 2. It's in the UGB. We are doing NEPA work and have a conceptual design for the whole corridor. And this first phase would be to widen to 4 lanes with median shoulder, separated bike path with a roundabout at Terry. It supports regional safety improvements and connectivity. It's $25 million for PE and construction. And then we're going to talk about the 126 West project more at the Lane Act meeting next Wednesday. But this first phase for the 126 West looks at intersection improvements, traffic calming, and operational improvements at intersections in that corridor. The TPC recommended not ranking the areas that are outside of the MPO, which is Cresswell. And this is a small project, $3 million for the Cresswell community that we'll talk more about with the Lane Act. Are there any questions, or Paul, would you want to bring up anything I might have missed?
Chair, the only thing I will add, just so the committee knows, the staff recommendation was informed in one respect by Eugene staff indicating that the 2 Beltline projects, while these are regional facilities, the 2 Beltline projects and the 2 126 West projects fall wholly or partly within the city of Eugene. And City of Eugene staff indicated that the Beltline projects were a higher priority for Eugene than the 126 West projects. So that was probably the primary reason why this is ranked this way as the staff recommendation.
Thank you very much, both Franny and Paul. Are there any questions, comments from board members? I see. Yes, Commissioner Buck. We'll both try and ignore Mayor Smith for a moment.
But I'm sure we'll talk about the same thing. So I really want to appreciate seeing some of the smaller communities on this list. I know that Mayor Smith's been able to already articulate today the needs for the Coborg Interchange. I'm pleased to see that in Tier 1, as well as it is a regional economic development center that's going to affect a lot of people in Springfield and Eugene as well. And I'm happy to see that moving forward. I do really appreciate seeing on this list Cresswell as well. I know it's outside the MPC and the MPO, but as I also represent the area of Cresswell and know how desperately they need their investment for this particular upgrade as well, I just want to appreciate the recommendation that they are on the list and look forward to having that discussion in the Lane Act.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Mayor Smith.
I told you you might regret all those compliments you gave me at the start of the meeting, Chair.
I already do. No, I'm just kidding.
Of course, Coborg is very glad to be able to keep this in the Tier 1 projects as far as the Coborg Interchange. It's been something that Coborg has been planning around for 25 years, and I've heard comments that it's been on the list 25 years. Yes, it has. It's been in discussion for 30 years since I was on the Coborg Planning Commission. And I know all of these have. The reference to the Beltline, Beltline is a true consideration for Coborg because we get an awful lot of commuter traffic because of the Beltline problem. So Coborg wants to throw in its support that Beltline is a true issue, especially I think that Arterial Bridge, which so many of our residents commute over to that River Road area, and having that Arterial Bridge would help offset the Beltline problem. So I think it's a good list. Again, like I said before, I think this body really needs to consider prioritization and putting ranking on these projects as we move forward into the future. Because I think when we present a big list and we go up the ladder and say, here's a basket instead of a prioritized list, I think if I was a decision maker that got a basket, I would be hesitant to be putting those priorities on when the local owners of those priorities won't even put a priority on it. So I think that's something this body really needs to think about, is priorities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yes, Mr. Norton.
I'd just like to go, I guess, pile on with what Mayor Smith just said about the Arterial Bridge. That allows our transit district to connect the northern parts of our community from Springfield to Santa Clara, which we really don't have now. And having that bridge would be a very good addition to our transit system. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mayor Van Gordon.
No, I'm supportive of this list. I think it's a really good regional list. And I think I'm glad to see the Beltline continues to be on that, because I think it impacts all the safety traffic that's sort of around it and how it goes through Coburg and a lot of the other things that Mayor Smith pointed out. The only comment that I would make is Paul, is this whole list going to be shown to Lane Act for its feedback?
At this, no. Well, in a sense, no. What has been put into the Lane Act packet for next week's meeting is this entire list without the TPC recommendations or your rankings yet. That will be something that only I will walk in as, again, the MPO's seat at that table.
Okay. Now the list looks good to me, and I'm glad Cresswell's on there too. They've been talking about that project for a long time as well.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I see two hands from people that have already spoken. So Mr. Norton, did you want to speak? No. Mayor Smith. Okay. Anyone else?
Chair?
Yes.
I do want to make one more comment that I should have offered earlier. Staff noted as they were developing this recommendation, and I want to convey that as we convey this information to ODOT, which is being done right now to Ms. Brendel, and as you know, perhaps I convey it to the Lane Act, these priorities are priorities for spending, if you will, dedicated highway improvement monies on these ODOT system projects, but they in no way counteract what we just talked about in the previous agenda item, which is the priority for flexible funding is in other areas, in non-highway projects, in bike and pedestrian and public transit improvements. In other words, we want to make it clear that there's not a conflict of purposes there, that overall the priorities for flexible funding is to direct them away from highway projects to non-highway investments. But where investments in these projects are coming from, if you will, dedicated highway funding, for instance, the Oregon gas tax, which has the constitutional limitation, these would be the priorities for the use of that type of funding.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve these comments to ODOT? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
I'll move approval of I'll just say the input, approve input to the Oregon Department of Transportation of these particular list of priorities.
Thank you. And Mayor Smith is seconding. Is there discussion to the motion? All those in favor of approving these comments to ODOT, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show that this body has unanimously approved these comments to ODOT. Thank you very much. We're now on item 6E, which I tried to get to early. I apologize. FFY 2021 annual listing of federal obligations. And I believe now Mr. McAllister will give us a report.
Thank you. It's Collister.
I'm sorry. I'll never say that again. McAllister.
Collister. I get that all the time.
Collister. Thank you.
You got it. Third time's a charm. This is just for information only. This is the federal listing of obligated projects for the MPO for federal fiscal year 2021. This was published on the MPO website to satisfy the federal requirements. We do this every year. It's just presenting a list of all of the projects in the MPO that had federal funds that were obligated during the federal fiscal year 2021, which is October 1st to September 30th. I'll give just a high-level overview of the numbers from this report. We had a total of $34.7 million obligated to projects in the MPO in the previous federal fiscal year. 59% of those were for LTD projects. Also, we had for the funding that the MPO has discretion of, our STBG, our TA, and CMAQ funds. We obligated $3.1 million. I should define obligation. So obligation it's an official commitment from the federal government to committed those funds at that point for the purpose of that project. It's essentially an authorization to start spending those funds. And it's a good indication of projects moving forward. So we like to see a lot of funds obligated. We don't like to see projects delayed. When projects aren't obligated, they need to be delayed to a later federal fiscal year. And in recent years, the three large MPOs in Oregon have been held more accountable for how we're obligating our funds on time, our federal funds. They don't like to see projects delayed because that's a burden on ODOT. So we've been working with ODOT for some strategies on how we can improve our timely obligation of projects. So that last number I gave you, the $3.1 million, those are that's the funding that we're primarily looking at when we're talking about this obligation tracking, this accountability. This is good. I think we heard in a previous MPC presentation about how all of those three large MPOs in Oregon exceeded what was expected in this first year of this accountability period. The way that we're ultimately going to be accountable is every 3 years we'll total the discretionary funds that we programmed, and for the first 3-year period we will need to have obligated 45% of what we program from those discretionary funds, or else we'll be subject to some penalties, which may include loss of funding. We're perfectly on track to meet that. Ultimately, we'll be held to 80% once this is fully rolled out. That's traditionally about where Central Lane MPO has obligated those funds in the past. So this is looking great, and kudos to our partner agencies who have been obligating the projects on time, and this all looks really great. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. The list includes the actual list of each project and the actual obligated amounts, which we're interested.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collister. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion?
No motion necessary.
Pardon me?
No motion necessary. This is just presenting for your information.
Thank you very much. It seems for some reason, sir, it's with your item that I'm making all the mistakes, but thank you for the information. If there are no questions or comments, we are on item 6F, follow-up and next steps, ODOT update. Ms. Brindle, before you provide that, I'm going to have to give the gavel to Vice Chair Groves. I did not anticipate chairing this meeting, and I have a previous commitment. So it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. I know, Vice Chair, you're capable, and I'll see you next month. Thank you, everybody. I apologize.
Thank you, Chair, for your service.
Oh, thank you all. This has been really fun. Thanks.
Okay, that's ODOT update time. Franny Brindle, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilor Groves. So the only thing I want to talk about is that we're going to have a Lane Act meeting next Wednesday evening, the 12th. We're going to be appointing a chair, vice chair, and ambassador for the Lane Act, ambassador to the OTC. And the nominating committee will be presenting their slate of nominations. We'll also be talking about the 126 West safety improvements as forwarded by the steering committee for that project, and getting some updates on that. And then we'll also be talking about the projects that we just brought before you without the tiered approach, just in general for the Lane Act, as it's more of a regional body. And we'll talk about we're just going to give them the first blush at those projects to think about, previewing that so that they can make some decisions in February on prioritization. This is an important item as we move forward with funding. We don't anticipate there'll be a ton of dollars available through ODOT from the infrastructure allotments at this time, but there are grant opportunities that we will want to apply for. And this list is going to be important for us to resource staff time and energy and dollars toward those grants, and also to show the OTC that we have all these projects that need funding. There hasn't been funding available for a real long time, and we've been keeping these projects kind of going on a shoestring, if you will, with little bits of money to keep them moving forward through a NEPA process or for concept design and estimation. And then we're going to talk about consolidating the ODOT public transportation funding programs, in which the STIF program and the special transportation fund programs will be combined through administrative rules. So they're going to talk about that update and what it means to us. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything on the Metro TIP administrative amendments?
Hey, Randy, I just had one quick question or comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see. Yes, Mayor, I apologize. I didn't see. Going back and forth to my agenda.
It happens to us all. You're lucky I'm not on mute right now. Franny, I wanted to offer thanks. I know that like with the weather, you guys have been out there and they've been working through the snow and doing a lot to get these roads cleared. I've been watching the pictures on Twitter, even north of here, like ODOT's doing a lot right now. And I just wanted to tell you that I saw it and I appreciated it.
Thank you. And we are down on staff because we're still supporting the fire recovery. So we are doing well despite the staff shortages. So thank you so much to hear that. Means a lot.
All right. And those comments were much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor. And I too want to send my appreciation for ODOT's work. Paul, do we have anything on the Metro TIP administrative amendments?
No, thank you, Councilor. As always, they're in your packet for your information. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Councilor Moe. You're muted, sir. Councilor Moe, were you? Oh, okay, there you go.
It would not unmute. I could bear what was going on here. You know, I sort of lost my place here, but is this a list of projects? Boy, I remember the old days when this stuff was in paper. Is this a list of obligated projects we're talking about?
No.
Okay, then please don't pay attention to me. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, item F3, next steps in building the agenda. Paul, is that yours?
Chair, I guess there's one thing I'd like to ask, and it's a question that comes from one of the public comments at the beginning of this meeting. We have over the past 2 years, as we're currently doing, run these meetings via Zoom and provided the full video and Zoom access only to members and staff and presenters to maintain security, because unfortunately at the very first Zoom meeting of the MPC, we had security problems. And it was noted today during public comments that it may not be ideal for public involvement or public participation to have only phone access for them. So I guess I'm asking if there's any thoughts or any direction from the MPC on perhaps changing the way we're doing this in any way.
Okay, Mayor Venice.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do remember that first meeting, and that was very unpleasant. But I think we've, Zoom has improved, and we have a couple of years experience with this now, and certainly City Council, we have not had any problem with sort of moving people into panelist status briefly so they can provide their testimony by video if they want, and then moving them back into attendee status. So I think that's really be just a staff function, and I do think it's accessible, and it's kind of a better experience anyway to be able to see people as they're testifying. So I would encourage LCOG to, look at, it has worked well for the city of Eugene, so maybe there's a model there you can follow.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Buck.
I concur. We're doing our very first Zoom this week for the Board of Commissioners. We're moving from GoToMeeting platform to Zoom, and it's got some really great features. It's got some things you have to really watch out for. You can easily get people filling up the chat, and that's hard for a public meeting forum, or there's a question and answer area that doesn't quite work for some meetings as well. So I'm all for trying to make it more accessible to people. I think the tech is finally getting to a point where it can be used in a much better format for public agencies at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Smith.
I'd certainly agree that we should try to get into the Zoom format for them. Just the clunkiness of trying to unmute your phone, watching the webcast, which is 2-3 seconds, 5 seconds behind. And so we're sitting there waiting for the lag. Coborg is using it. Of course, we're a small town. We've had little to no problems. It does take some more staff time, I know. And as Mayor Venice said, maybe there's a way that staff can technically move it around to keep us safe, but be more fluid with the public input.
Thank you, Mayor. Any more questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. We just have our upcoming meetings on January 6th. What is January 6th? February 3rd, which unfortunately I will be in the air during that meeting, so I will not be able to attend. March 3rd and April 7th. Is there anything else to come before the MPC? Seeing none, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you very much and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.